Today I'm going to show you how to install the fender kit on the RipRacer. Included in your kit is the rear fender, the front fender, 4 bolts, M5 bolts. You'll get 1 medium, 1 short one, and 2 longer ones. 4 M5 washers. 2 large zip ties. Open-ended wrench with an 8mm and 10mm side. We'll be using the 10mm side. 4mm L Allen wrench. A tri wrench with a 4 and a 5 and a 6mm side, and we'll be using the 5mm side. And also 2 clamps for the stays, that fork clamps that are going to go onto the forks. Also, you will need, not included, some kind of bike pump, scissors, and some pliers. Before starting to work on your bike, it's always a good idea to take the battery off. Take it off and then turn it off, hold it down for a few seconds, and set it aside. Okay, we're gonna start by putting on the front fender. First thing we're gonna do is take this nut off the back here. We're gonna use the 10mm side of your wrench. Start unscrewing it. If the bolt head here starts to spin, you use the 5mm side of your Allen tool, kind of get it in there just enough to wedge it in there to hold it still. We're gonna loosen this nut up. And then all you're gonna do is, by the time you get it where you can get it off by hand, you're gonna take the nut and the washer off. You're gonna slide the fender in like this. Don't have to take off the front wheel or anything. Put it right, this piece right here, this bracket, right over the bolt, and put your washer in, the washer you just took out, and then the nut. Start to screw it in by hand. And then get it as tight as you can by hand. And you're gonna be able to slide it a little bit if you need to adjust it. Then you're gonna grab 10mm side of your wrench, and then you can use your tri-Allen here, the 5mm side, and you can start tightening this down. There we go. And make sure your light is straight. And now we're ready to go on to the next step. Okay, we're gonna take the fender stay fork clamp and we're gonna remove the bolts off of here. Remove both bolts, keep the washer with this one. And then take both the nuts out. And then you're gonna install the clamp like this onto the fork. Then you're gonna grab one of the nuts. You're gonna put one nut there. We'll put the second nut there. And slide it around. And take this bolt without the washer. Thread it in by hand. And you're gonna take the longer one with the washer, and you're gonna take this fender stay right here, and you're gonna line that up with the eyelet, and you're gonna put that in by hand also. Making sure to hold that nut back there. Just get as much as you can by hand, even if it's just a little loose, because we're gonna be adjusting this. So we kind of want to keep it loose for right now. And you can also take your 4mm if you just want to tighten it up just a little more, but we still don't want it too tight yet. So we can tighten these both up a little bit, but we still want to be able to slide it around. Now we're gonna go on to the other side and do the same thing. Now we did the same thing on the other side, so now the other clamp's on, still loose enough to kind of adjust it. And now we're gonna start to adjust this so that everything is kind of centered properly. So you can adjust these clamps a little bit sideways. So move them a little bit sideways if you want to center. Make sure that the fender is all centered, and you don't want it too far down or too far up like this. Kind of make sure both sides here are kind of even. And then you can kind of twist it one way or the other also to kind of center the fender onto the wheel itself, the tire itself. And then when you've got it pretty close to center, you can take either the 4mm side on your tri-tool or the little 4mm Allen wrench, and you could start to tighten down. You would start first by tightening these clamps down. Okay. Okay. And then next you're going to tighten down the stays. There, can you move it a little, make sure it's tight. Looks pretty even. If you need to, you can tighten down this nut right here also now that you're done. Now just make sure this nut's tight also. There. Now check to make sure everything's nice and snug, not sliding around. You should be all good to go. If all that is nice and snug, you're good to go. All right, before putting on the rear fender, without having to take off the rear wheel, what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually deflate the tire. So take off the valve cap. Now you can use your 4mm Allen to help you take out the air out. So you're gonna press down on the valve cap and let all the air out. After you've gotten all the air out as much as you can, here's a quick tip. Put the valve cap back on, because since you don't have any air in here, this can actually get stuck inside there. But with the valve cap on there, it won't go all the way through. We don't want to lose that. So we want to still keep the stem out of here. So just put your valve cap back on for the time being, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now you're gonna have a friend hold down the tire up here on this area. We're doing this so that when we put the rear fender on, you have easier access to get the bolts into here. So you're gonna take a zip tie and you're gonna put it through. And then tighten it down as tight as you can. And then about 6 inches apart, you're gonna put the next zip tie in. And then we're gonna grab some pliers. And the pliers will help you grab the zip tie even a little bit more. Want it about as tight as possible. So you have as much room as possible to work underneath there. All right, quick tip here before we slide the fender on, and we're gonna be actually attaching bolts here and down here. I would recommend taking your bolt right now, and this one's a medium-sized bolt that's gonna go under here, and trying to make sure that everything threads in there fine by hand. You might have to, if it's a little hard to get it in there, you might have to use the little Allen wrench to get it in there, but we wanna make sure before we put the fender on that this threads on there pretty easily, so that when the fender's on there and we're reaching under here, we're not struggling as much, that we already know this threads in pretty easily. So do the same thing with this bottom one here. And make sure it's threaded in. And then take it back out again. And now we're ready to put the fender on. Now what we're gonna do is slide the fender into here. You're gonna have a hole right here, like a little slot, and you have this right here. And we're gonna line this up. And we're gonna take this bolt. That's to go through the fender, so try to line it up. There we go. Out this side of the fender so you can see the bolt there. And start to slide it down and then line it up. And then by hand try to screw that bolt into the bolt hole on the frame. I got that in there just kind of hand tight, but you can also move. You can kind of tilt this on the kickstand a little bit and move this around if you need, you know, a better spot where you can put your hand in there, but get as much as you can by hand. You still want to be able to slide it a little bit because then we're going to put the next bolt on the bottom. If you need to, before we put this bolt in right here on this hole, you can move the tire a little bit if you need to get a little more room, get the area with the most room so that you can reach your hand in there. Then you're going to reach in there, put that bolt through there, and get it started by hand. This side could be definitely a little difficult, so it might take a couple of tries. But once you feel it threading in, then get as much as you can by hand. There we go. Take the 4mm Allen wrench and start tightening it down. Pretty snug. And now we're going to do the top one. Now we're going to tighten this top one down now. So if you need to, you know, make sure you hold this steadily. You need to move this a little bit to whatever section that makes it easiest for you to get your hands in there. You know, and take your L Allen and get in there. It's a little tight, but you should be able to get in there. And start tightening that bolt and washer down. Get that as snug as you can. You don't want to super over tighten it, but you definitely want it pretty snug. And now that that's snug, you're all set. All right, now we're going to install the stays. So you're going to find your longer bolts and a washer. And then we're going to hook this stay to this bottom one. You can hook it to either one, but I would suggest this bottom one because if you do end up putting the rear rack on there, it might kind of get in the way there. So I suggest putting it on this bottom hole right here. So thread this in as best you can by hand, and you can use either your 4mm Allen again, or if you want to, you can also use this tool right here with the 4mm side, your tri-Allen wrench. Get that on there. Make sure it's pretty snug. And then go on to the next side doing the same exact thing. Now we got the bolt on the other side. Make sure that one's pretty snug and tight. Now everything's nice and tight. Before we cut these zip ties off, if you want to go back through, make sure, you know, your little bolts under here are tight, because once you get the zip ties off, it's going to be really hard to get back under there. So double check all your bolts under there, but when you're satisfied everything's nice and tight, then we're going to go ahead and cut these zip ties off with use your scissors. And definitely need to be careful here. We don't want to be cutting any of the tire off or anything like that, so just cut them off. And just get somewhere where you're not going to, make sure you don't puncture your tire or anything with your scissors, so be very, very careful. There. Now you have both of these zip ties off, and you'll be ready to add air to your tire again. definitely before we add air, make sure everything's seated right. And then we're gonna proceed to add air into the tire now. Now we're ready to add air. You can use a hand pump or any kind of pump. This pump's great though, that we have. Just hook it onto your valve stem. Now we're not fully aired up, but we want to make sure before we fully air up that none of the tube or anything else is sticking out. Since we had all the air out of there, there's a possibility that the tube can kind of stick out and get stuck in between. So definitely check, make sure that we're seating properly, check both sides before you continue on. So we got some air that's enough to make it take some shape, but always want to double check that. And then after you double checked everything and it looks like it's still filling up okay and we don't have any tube or anything sticking out and that the bead is seating properly, go ahead and continue to add more air. All right, now that you have proper air pressure in there, tire's all good to go, put the valve cap back on. I would suggest spin the tire, make sure nothing's hitting any of the stays or any part of the fender itself. And if it spins good, I think you're all ready to go. Now that you have the fenders on, you can put the battery back on and you're ready to ride. Thanks for watching.